Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about the latest episodes of TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Flash, iZombie, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In this week's episode of The Flash, we get introduced to a new speedster named Trajectory, which I really like that name. I really like the name the speedsters get, you know? Like you have Flash, you have Reverse Flash, you have Zoom, you have Impulse, and now Trajectory. They always end up having like awesome names. Basically, this new speedster is a common thief, and because of the way that she moves and kind of her outfit, and because she's moving so fast, but she kind of has that orange reddish lightning effect to her running, everyone just assumes she's the Flash. Even like Iris's boss is like, oh, this is definitely the Flash, which is like, really? How are you going to up and say it's the Flash? You've literally run into 3 other speedsters. You know there are at least 3 other people that can move as fast as the Flash can. Let's not forget, there's the Reverse Flash, which everyone knows about. There's Zoom, which the whole city knows about because he beat the crap out of Barry. And then there's, that time Jay showed up when Barry was in, like, on Earth 2. So that's at least 3 speedsters. Granted, her boss was like, oh, that's definitely not Jay because I don't see it like a silver helmet or something. But still, how you going to jump and assume it's Barry, the Flash? Because, like, you've seen multiple speedsters, so it's like, it's a little crappy on your part to kind of just assume. Which is, granted, it's kind of a little bit looked into because he kind of goes on a quote-unquote date with Iris, and he goes, like, he talks about, like, a corrupt mayor that he ended up, well, I don't know if it was that he exposed, but it was a mayor that got exposed. Like, he saw the mayor for what he really was, but everyone else couldn't see it. Iris is trying to convince him. It's like, it's not. I mean, obviously, she knows it's not the Flash because, she's always going to have take the Flash's side, now that she knows it's Barry. It makes you wonder, like, if she didn't know the Flash is Barry, how would situations like this, turn about? Because it'd be very interesting. I mean, obviously, I feel like, because she was always enamored with, the Flash, so I feel like she would always take his side, but she takes it, she'll stand up for him even more, now that she knows it's Barry. And, I don't know, I just think that's very interesting. Basically, Trajectory is actually this woman named Eliza. She's a scientist at Mercury Labs. She's actually a friend of Caitlin's. Caitlin actually went to her to help her re-engineer Velocity 9. Caitlin thought, as long as she didn't give her all the components to make it, that, she wouldn't have to worry about it. She gave her, I think she said 3 of the 8 components, but Eliza was still able to reverse engineer it, and it has been taking it. And it's really interesting because I think this is our first time really seeing the negative effects of Velocity 9. Like, we know it's killing Jay, I mean, obviously. But, like, she was legitimately going crazy. Like, it was like, she was acting like an addict. We actually saw that. She was just like, I know, just like, no, I don't need it right now. And then, like, she has that voice inside of her head, which is kind of the speedster inside of her going like, no, take it. You need it, Not really 100% understanding what her reasoning for it was. Basically, she wanted to be faster at her work job because basically she constantly got passed over. So the V9 helped her, do her job better. And eventually it just got to the point she just needed it. So it was a very interesting. I did really like that part when she was dashing across the bridge. She was like dashing across the bridge so much and so fast that the bridge started slowly breaking apart. And I liked the part like when the bridge actually was falling apart. I always like that, like when someone's running across a bridge and it's damaged and it's falling apart. I really like that because like as she was running across it, like it finally started collapsing. And Barry had been doing some training trying to get faster, so he was trying to jump a gorge, and so like the bridge was destroyed, and so he needed to jump over it, which I will nitpick about something as like, I feel like Barry could have easily just ran on the water to get to her. He didn't necessarily have to jump the bridge, but I get, like I said, I'm not one of those people that nitpick over things, but it's like, I've listened to other people and they nitpick over things like that, so now I'm nitpicking over it and I kind of hate it. But, you know, it's just one of those things. I don't care. It doesn't change the fact that it's pretty awesome he was able to jump like that long of a distance. But he was able to stop Eliza. He's like, you know, stop. You don't need to take any V9. Like, just stop. Like, you know, trying to like cheat your way to like, you know, you don't need it because, you know, especially because it's killing you. Because Barry found out about V9 because, you know, Caitlin as well as, you know, Wells had been keeping it from him. And I think it's good reason why they like kept it from. Obviously, they kept it from because Jay told them, don't tell Barry about, because Barry himself is like, yo, I'm working my butt off and you're telling me there's this drug out here that will make me even faster. Yes, dude, there's a drug. You know, they wouldn't like hide that from you for like no reason. He's like, but you know, and he's thinking to himself like, it'll be worth it. If I can take down Zoom, it'll be worth it. Oh yeah, it'll be worth it in the end when you die from taking it. I mean, because as we've seen, it's an addictive drug. So like the more you take it, the more like it messes with both your mind and your body. So it's eventually going to kill you. Because like what happened was, it finally happened. Like she injected herself one last time, even when Barry tried to like talk her out of it, you know, because Wells successfully talked Barry out of doing it earlier in the episode. And then she like starts running. And then she starts running so fast, which I like this, like that effect of what it looked like. Like her lightning start turning blue and her body disintegrated. I was like, oh my God. Like, granted, it was a terrible thing, but that looked awesome. The way that I know it's a little sick of me saying that, but it looked pretty awesome. And then Barry noticed that because of her lightning turning blue. And he went back to the others and he's like, what if blue lightning means that someone's dying from Velocity 9? What if taking so much Velocity 9 is what turns your lightning blue? And so to start thinking about, wait, so Zoom has blue lightning, meaning he's dying from Velocity 9. We know at least one guy that's dying from Velocity 9. And that explains why Zoom is trying to get, you know, take so much speed. Like, that's why he was after Barry's speed, because he doesn't have a permanent cure. The only thing that's helping him is stealing speed from other speedsters. And then Caitlin's like, wait, no, it's not. And it's like, holy crap, Jay is freaking Zoom. They're like, no, there's no way. Everyone's like that. Even Cisco's like, no, there's no way. He's like, well, granted, I have been like vibing Zoom. And then Barry goes over and smashes the case open that has Jay's helmet and has Cisco touch it, and Cisco vibes one more time and sees Zoom remove his mask. The whole thing is like a little disheartening. Barry rushes off to the canyon and just screaming at the top of his lungs because it happened again. He was betrayed by another person he trusts, and he ended up being a bad guy. Like, you know, the whole thing with Wells trained him, ended up being the Reverse Flash. Now he actually admired someone else. He admired Jay Garrick, and it turns out he's freaking Zoom. It happened to him again. That betrayal, dude. It makes you wonder, like, how is he going to handle this? Because of what happened with Wells / Reverse Flash. I mean, granted, he ended up finding out that wasn't, you know, the real Wells. That ended up being Eobard, but still, you know, he was there. He was like a mentor to him. How's he going to handle this betrayal? And it does make it kind of makes you understand maybe that's what all the different there's at least 3 or 4 J's. There's the one that died. There's the one that zoomed, and then there's the one that, you know, is in a cage. I don't know which one of them is the Hunter Zolomon, you know, from Earth 1, the one that Jay introduced him to. Because Barry did do that thing, because I was thinking that was kind of the theory, the running theory is like, oh yeah, it's like, but how? We saw Jay be, you know, in 2 places at once. You know, that's what Cisco had said. But Barry's like, we've seen a speedster be in 2 places at once. Like, that was him commenting on season 1 when Wells, Eobard, had basically had that metahuman who could shapeshift into people, disguise as himself. That's how he was able to be in 2 places at once. Well, also because at one point he ended up, you know, using a hologram projection to make himself look like he was actually there. Or something like a hologram projection. But basically, because he's sick, he needs to take the speed force from other speedsters. So maybe that's what's up with all these different J's. Maybe they're J's from other worlds that he's like dashed through to get their speed. But it's like, if that's the case, maybe the person inside that cage isn't Jay, because it's like, once he steals their speed, why would he keep them around? Maybe there's something special about Barry's powers. Maybe he's constantly draining away from the guy in the mask, who might be Jay Garrick, or it might be Eddie, because some people have also thrown that out there too. I don't know. Also, why hasn't like Cisco ever vibed about this whole Zoom thing before? Maybe, like, I'm trying to think about it. Has he ever touched Jay or anything related to Jay prior to now? I feel like he has. Maybe that's something, if you go back to the season, he's never actually ever touched Jay or touched anything that belonged to Jay. Maybe not. Or maybe it's just his powers growing, or him getting better control of his powers. Another very interesting thing that happened in this episode was Jesse kind of got injected with Velocity 9, because Wells was trying to make, Trajectory had found her way into Star Labs, and was holding a gun to held Jesse captive until Wells made V9 for her, and then she was she's like, how do I know you didn't just put a sedative or something in here for? And she ends up stabbing Jesse, and Jesse almost dies from it, but they were able to flush her system by giving her a blood transfusion from Wells. It does make you wonder. I know that. I've heard that Jesse is a speedster in the comic books, so it makes me wonder, is this, obviously, is all the V9 out of her system? I keep shortening it to V9, and every time I say V9, I'm thinking V8, the drink. I'm just going to say Velocity 9 all the way through, just because it messes with me every time I say it. But if she has Velocity 9 in her system, maybe it's not 100% go. Maybe that's how she ends up becoming a speedster in this show. Because it's constantly debate, how, because she's apparently a short-lived speedster. She's not a speedster for that long. It's also how is Wally going to get his powers? It's I keep waiting for it. I'm kind of okay, is Wally going to come across Velocity 9 and become a speedster that way? And why hasn't it completely killed Zoom, that I'm bringing it up? Because we saw what it did to Eliza after a couple shots. She eventually disintegrated. Maybe it's because Jay was already a speedster to begin with. Because in her case, she was just a normal person, and she kept injecting herself with Velocity 9. Maybe the reason why Zoom isn't dead yet is because he's a speedster already, and he just made himself faster and faster. Another interesting thing came up between the reason Jessie ended up leaving, because she wanted to experience the world. But a very interesting thing came up between her and her dad. She ended up finding out about her dad, killing someone, particularly the turtle, because he was going out of his way to do anything to save his daughter. And she found out, and she's basically you can't just keep doing this. That you're doing the wrong thing for the right reasons. I get that. But you're doing it without even second guessing. She's like, you made that Velocity 9 and gave it to that lady, and there's no telling what, she'll do with it. Which, it's you can't really blame him for that. It's everyone kind of bends over backwards to protect the people that are important to them. Everyone in Star Labs kind of forgave him for it. Granted, Barry kind of made a wisecrack about it earlier. He's because he was kind of that, you shouldn't. It was a conversation between him and Wells about the whole Velocity 9 thing. It's you shouldn't do, basically don't do bad things. And then Barry's kind of it's ironic that you're telling me to do that. You're telling me that, after you've done bad things, But then, but then Wells was yeah, I'm not a, good person. Be a better person to me. Be like Jay, which I know at the time they didn't know at that time he said that Jay was Zoom, and it's just how ironic that statement is. But I get that whole protecting people, no matter what, because protecting especially those you love, bending over backwards to is it always best to go all out, do whatever it takes to protect people? Is that always the best thing? I mean, because Barry sees that now that's not the right thing. I guess that's kind of why Wells told him that, because he knows, like, you know, how Jesse was kind of disgusted with what he did, like, to protect her, to keep her safe, you know, to rescue her from Zoom's grasp. So. But, you know, like, with all these new developments, it's going to be interesting seeing how, you know, everything progresses along. So now moving on to this week's episode of iZombie. Once again, interesting developments. Blaine continues to be one of my favorite characters in this show. I'm kind of disappointed in myself. I didn't bring him up in my, like, a video I did when I talked about iZombie. I still regret that I didn't. It's just, I want anyone that watches the show to kind of be surprised, because he's one of the best surprises. Like, he's kind of he ended up being like a nobody that ends up becoming like a really good bad guy. I just love his dialogue, just how, you know, he's back to being a zombie again. He's basically going around that little, just like, brains. I'm just kidding. But I really am going to need some brains. This week's brain was that of a scientist. Essentially, she worked for a company. They were testing new stuff. It was like, I don't even know what the product was, but basically there was a woman who kind of had an allergic reaction. Not necessarily an allergic reaction, but it was a reaction that basically it combined with her anxiety meds, and she ended up, like, her face ended up getting severely scarred. The woman was, like, burned alive. The twist is, which I thought was a very interesting twist, it ended up being her twin sister. I didn't even, legitimately never crossed my mind that was going to be a thing in this show. It was like, yep, that's how, like, because you constantly saw two different sides to her. You saw, like, you know, obviously she had the burned face, but when, like, you know, when Liv and Clive met up with her earlier in the episode, she was like, oh, I had surgery. So she's like, there's no way I would have killed her because I held nothing against her. It's because that was her twin sister answering the door, because the real lady, the one that had the burned face, that sister was like, you know, she didn't leave the house until late at night. It's kind of sad, you know, like, I mean, really, the twin sister didn't do it for necessarily the best motives, because basically she wanted to live her life, but now she's kind of stuck taking care of her sister. Granted, she did it for her sister too, but part of her motive was just like, now I'm stuck taking care of my sister. But maybe that's kind of like, actually she meant that in a sweet way, like, oh, I, you know, have to look after my sister now. I have to be my sister's caretaker or something. But this particular doctor, her name is Dr. Cash, very interesting name, is actually also a doctor who worked in at Max Rager. She wasn't just any doctor. She worked in the secret basement, the one where, like, Max Rager's CEO was Von Du Clark, which is weird. I've never referred to him by his name. I always call him Max Rager dude. But Vaughn's, you know, little secret basement where he's working on zombies, apparently she worked there, and Liv kept seeing that. I thought it was kind of interesting in this episode, because she was trying to go undercover there. She ended up getting caught, obviously, that she ended up, you know, making herself look normal. It's very interesting, because basically she looked more like herself as, you know, the actress who plays Liv, Rose McIver. She kind of looked more like herself. So I thought that was kind of neat. Her new look and everything. It looked good on her, but, you know, Ravi was like, yeah, that looks weird. And Liv's like, oh, you've just been around dead people too much. It's like, okay. There was that moment earlier in the episode, where Max Rager dude, Vaughn, had, because he's been drinking all that Max Rager, he was going a little nuts and, you know, getting very aggressive. And then Rita showed up, and she kind of has a black eye, and, well, because a little earlier, Major revealed the fact is that him and Rita, like, ended up sleeping together. And then at the moment he found out about Vaughn being her dad, he's like, that's your daughter? And she came in and she took off the sunglasses, and he saw the black eye, which Liv fucked her up, dude. I was like, wow. Just, it's like black and her eye is a little reddish. It's like, man, Liv fucked her up. And then Major kind of laughed a little bit, and Vaughn's like, are you laughing after you did this to my daughter? She's like, no, it was Liv who did it. And basically he left with the new list of zombies he's supposed to take care of. What was a really interesting thing that happened at Max Rager was the fact is that they were going a little nuts. You know, obviously they're running their experiments, you know, testing Max Rager. You know, Apparently Max Rager is going to like make everyone this new Max Rager that they're working on is going to make everyone a little supercharged. Basically, I guess kind of giving them that kind of sort of zombie strength without obviously making them zombies. And then basically Max Rager, Vaughn is kind of like, see what I mean? I keep saying that. It's just because to me it just sounds like a name that might exist. I don't know, like Max Rager, like that seems like something he might name himself. Like that's why I keep messing up. Vaughn ends up, he was like, saying like, okay, well, it'll take like, think about it, criminal, everyone's going to be drinking it once they find out like, oh, it gets you super pumped like that and kind of gets you all aggroed like that. Criminals will be drinking it, and it'll take police officers drinking it to take them down, stuff like that. Just being the evil businessman, being just the evil businessman, and he's always weird and creepy, but I love him for it. Steven Weber, the actor who plays him, is it Steven or Steve Weber? He does an amazing job at playing that guy. It's like you like him just because of how evil and twisted he is, but at the same time you hate him for it. Anyway, he was poking at a zombie with like one of those shockers, and the zombie ended up snapping loose because it kind of it got aggro. It grabbed the scientist, ended up killing him, and Vaughn and his daughter Rita start running. Rita trips, I guess, because she hurt her ankle, but Vaughn, she's like, wait, Dad, wait. Ends up the jerk closes the door on her. And then he goes into his office, locks the door, and then just sits in his chair and closes it. I'm like, you SOB, that's your daughter you just left in there. Then he hears the elevator door opening, ding, and he turns around, and it's her. She's all bloodied up. She's banging on the door. Dad, open up. Dad! It's like, oh my God. So like, I'm wondering how did she get out of that situation? I personally don't think she got out of that situation 100% scot-free. She had to have gotten bitten. I think she's going to become a zombie and she's going to go to Liv for help. That's just how I feel about it. That'd be pretty awesome if that was the case, though. Especially because Liv, kind of hates her now because the whole major situation and being lied to. But it's very interesting. I think that'd be kind of interesting if she has to go to Liv for help now because she's like, I'm turning into a zombie now. And then maybe her and Rita kind of join up because she starts telling Liv everything that's going down. Some other developments. Ravi, made another cure and gave it to Blaine. He feel like out of anyone that has to take it, Blaine has to, because Blaine is like, out of anyone in that situation, Blaine's the best guinea pig because he is dying. So it's kind of, it's all or nothing for him now. And I really like that twisted scene where just like Blaine is very sympathetic. He's telling the guys that work for him, he's like, yeah, you guys are the best workers I've ever had. If I end up dying, because there's no guarantee that this cure will work, because if the cure could either, in fact, cure me or it could kill me, because he's basically been laying low because he doesn't want Mr. Boss to know that he's still alive. He's like, telling, them to keep the whole business low key. He's like, but basically he's like, you guys are the best workers I've ever had, getting all sympathetic. And it's weird seeing him like that. Because usually Blaine doesn't give a crap about anybody. And it's like, seeing this side of him is like, okay, this is new. This is weird. And basically at the end of the episode, I don't know if you actually see him inject himself with it. We do see him looking at it. But I don't remember if you actually see him inject himself with the quote-unquote cure. Another development is that Liv, because she was on this scientist's brain, ended up, reevaluating her relationship with Drake, because she always noticed the fact is that Drake kind of counseled on her or was always late, so she was trying to find out the reason for it. And, the scientific part of her brain was kind of trying to break it down, trying to come up with hypothesis as why he may be like this. And, at one point she I don't know whether it's put a tracker on his phone or put a kind of a burner phone on him that acted as a tracker. I don't know what the case was like, but she was able to track him nonetheless. And she ends up finding out that he works for Mr. Boss. And she wants to ask him about it, and she invites him to a diner. which he shows up to, but he was in the car talking to his mom. And before he can go in there, Major takes him down because what I'm trying to understand, I didn't really get that scene. I guess Major, like, obviously there were new zombie names on the list, but I'm trying to understand, like, there were a whole bunch of people on the list, so maybe Blaine threw out Drake's name to see if it was on the list, and it was on the list. I didn't really 100% get that scene, but, obviously, if that was the case, I kind of get why Blaine did that, though, because he's kind of pissed at Drake, because Drake is working for Mr. Boss, and, he's kind of like, he's Blaine's inside man, so he's like, Drake should have came to me telling me that Mr. Boss was coming after me. It could have prevented me from, getting my throat slit and turned back into a zombie, because that escalates this whole, oh, I'm dying now phase. Because at the very least, it shortened that phase for Blaine. Because he'd have a little bit more time. Because once you enter that second stage of reverting back into a zombie, then the clock starts ticking down. At least Major has a little bit more time because he hasn't reverted back into a zombie. Like I said, Blaine's was escalated because he got killed, so. But I'm so interested to see where everything goes. It's like, especially when that conversation comes up, like, obviously because before, Major does his thing, before locking people up in the freezer, he talks to them. So it's going to be interesting when he finds out that Drake is Liv's new boyfriend, and maybe Drake finds out about who Major is, being the ex. And maybe it won't even turn out to be a talk. Because if it did turn into a talk, maybe he'd end up telling Major, yo, I'm like an undercover cop. I mean, I can't wait for that twist to come out, to find out that he's an undercover cop. I can't wait till even Liv finds out. Because it makes you wonder, like, how's she going to feel about everything? But it's like, I don't think it's ever going to turn into a conversation between, Major and Drake. I think Drake is going to beat him up and try and get away from him. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. And it's like, how's Liv gonna feel about this whole thing? Because she's gonna feel like Drake just up and just bounced, And now the whole Blaine situation, the Rita situation, the Max Ranger situation, it's just, I can't wait to find out what's gonna happen next. Now moving on to this week's episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where we have Bobby and Hunter, which we learn Hunter's full name, which is pretty badass, which is Asmodeus Ravenclaw Hunter. Hunter's already a badass name, yet you escalated it even more by giving yourself is it like that was his full name? Basically, whatever. I'm sorry. I had to draw attention to it because the moment I heard it, I was like, dude, that's amazing. Because even a real actor's got a real awesome name. I think, if I remember correctly, the actor's name is Nick Blood. Sorry, moving on. Basically, it deals with Bobby and Hunter, still tracking down Malik. They're in Russia, I think specifically Moscow. Originally, they were in Siberia, but the episode bounces back and forth between them being in Siberia, where they were chasing down Malik, and in Moscow, where they're under arrest for apparently killing some, Russian officials. So essentially, Malik is spinning the situation where, basically, in the Russian government, not everyone is okay with the whole, inhuman, quote-unquote safe zone. A safe place for Inhumans. Granted, it's just a place to gather all the Inhumans. Because I was constantly bouncing back and forth and wondering, is that Russian guy a good guy or a bad guy? Turns out he is a bad guy. That whole, he was just BSing about the whole, safe zone for Inhumans, a place for them to feel, a place for them to call home. It's like, no, a place for you to gather up all the Inhumans and use them as weapons. It's very interesting. It turns out that there's a general in the Russian government. He's a pretty high general that in the, hierarchy-wise, and he's apparently an Inhuman. He has a very interesting power. It's not that he can control his shadow. Basically, he has the power to give, in Simmons' words, materialize sentient dark matter. Basically, it can act and think on its own. It's pretty badass because basically it attacks you and then it sinks into the ground and then it comes out of the out of solid objects, and you can't even, not even Daisy's powers can affect it because she'll use her powers on it and it'll kind of break apart, but then it'll kind of reassemble. So I thought that was a pretty neat power. The only way they could do it was by, killing the general. Because basically the whole thing was a setup. The prime minister of Russia was coming to that base, and basically Malik was like, why don't we just cut him loose and have him kill the prime minister? That way we can get rid of our opposition. Because there's a lot of people in the government that aren't okay with the whole Inhumans being, in this one particular place thing. Granted, the prime minister is not 100% that, he's not that much better, because apparently, because he talks about it later in the episode, talking about how it is kind of an arms race between, who can kind of gather up the most Inhumans kind of situation. But basically, the parts where it's like flashing back and forth is talking about how, basically showing you how Bobby and Hunter got to where they are. They're under arrest, for killing those officials, which granted it wasn't their fault, especially because they ended up killing a general, because that was the only way to stop his power and to stop him, and that's how they got arrested. Other things that happened in this episode was we had a very interesting team up where Hunter and May ended up teaming up together, and that ended up leading to like a conversation where that conversation came back, where like last episode, Hunter and May were like, May's like, oh, we're not friends or whatever. And Hunter's like, I would take a bullet for anyone in this team. But then, May's like, this whole time, basically, she kind of brought up that Andrew situation. I figured that's why May was still pissed at him. Granted, Andrew ended up being, Lash, but still, he took the shot at Ward, even though he knew it would mean Andrew would get killed. And obviously the worst part about the situation was because Hunter, he messed up. He wounded Ward, but he didn't actually kill him. He risked Andrew's life. She's basically like, the reason, obviously he did that because he wanted revenge for Bobby. S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't about revenge. We have to make certain sacrifices that we have to do things for the greater good, no matter, the sacrifices to those around, to those we care about, as we have to act for the greater good. And he's like, we even have to put it above the people we love. And then like May was like, yeah. And then he apologized about the whole situation. Speaking of Hunter, there was an interesting conversation between him and Bobby earlier, because I loved it. Like Bobby's looking out, at the Russian facility, and he's just staring at her, and she's like, hello, what? Hi. And he's like, hi. And he's just like, she ends up saying like, we're not going to do that here. And he's like, get your mind out of the gutter. Basically like, we're not about to have sex out here on the snow. He basically was like, yeah, we never taken a vacation. She's like, yes, we have. She's like, start listing off places. My favorite being, she's like, Florence. And she starts smiling, and Hunter goes, that wasn't me. And then she kind of was like, oh, quickly changed subject. It's like, well, I'm sure we have vacation. It's like, oh my God. That, to me, I'd be a little hurt. It's like, wait, who'd you take with you to, now that we're on that subject, who, you're so happy about what happened in Florence. What did happen in Florence? I really like that. But anyway, the whole situation ended with, they ended up saving the prime minister's life, but that didn't mean jack squat, because he was basically going to make Hunter and Bobby take the fall, because everyone kept pushing him to be like, yeah, it was total, you guys work for S.H.I.E.L.D. Obviously, you're ex-S.H.I.E.L.D. agents, but they kept being like, S.H.I.E.L.D. is dissolved, right? There's no, like, S.H.I.E.L.D. We were just here on vacation. We just happened to be in the wrong place at the right time. And basically, even Coulson's like, you should be thanking these people, these tourists. They saved your life, but you're up here trying to, blame them for it. Coulson wanted to kind of get them out of there, but they decided, like, no, you can't do that, sir, because us, if you go out of your way to help us, it's going to expose S.H.I.E.L.D., and it's going to expose the fact is that S.H.I.E.L.D. is connected to the U.S. government. It's going to lead to more tensions between Russia and the U.S., and that's going to lead to, well, in Coulson's words later on, it's going to lead to another Cold War, actually something worse than a Cold War, another Cold War. And so Bobby and Hunter end up taking the fall for the situation. Basically, they get, what was the word he used? Disavowed. to me, basically, it means they got blacklisted, which means they can no longer work government jobs. They've been officially cast out. Kind of the government turned their backs on them. Obviously, they're not going to face any criminal charges, but that means they can no longer do any government work, means they can no longer work with S.H.I.E.L.D. because it's, like I said earlier, they got blacklisted. I did like it. I did kind of like that scene at the very end where they kind of, they got a spy's goodbye. Basically, a whole bunch of shots got sent to their table, and then they looked around the bar and they see everyone there, and basically they're toasting to say goodbye. And just the hardest one for me was Max, because Mac was like tearing. Obviously, like Hunter and especially Bobby was tearing up, but freaking Mac was tearing up. He couldn't even at first drink the drink, but he finally drunk it, and he nodded, was smiling. Everyone said their goodbyes to him. It was a beautiful, beautiful moment. Apparently there is supposed to be a spinoff in the works, apparently, that, Hunter and Bobby are going to be a part of. I forgot what it's actually called. So maybe this is their exit of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. so they can go off and be a part of that. So we will be seeing them more, just not in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because they can no longer work for S.H.I.E.L.D. I forgot what it was. Like I said, I've heard it brought up in Superhero Roundup. I just can't remember exactly what it's called. So. And at the very end, we get introduced to Malik's daughter, which is interesting. I mean, obviously, she knows about the whole thing because she even brings up, the whole Ward. She's like, oh, when am I going to meet him? So what's up with the whole Ward situation? So it's like, oh, okay. So we met your daughter. So obviously, she's going to play some role in this. Maybe... I don't know. Personally, I think it'd be kind of interesting if that led to, like, she becomes, like, the right-hand person to Ward/Hive. Because it's like, you don't introduce a character like that for no reason. It's like, oh yeah, Malik has a daughter. That's it. It's like, she's going to play some role in this. Granted, I don't know what that is. But I can't wait to see, like, how everything goes down. Like, where did it go from here? Like, because another interesting thing, I was about to skip over it, and it kind of flipped back in my mind. Hunter had brought it up in the episode how, like, they always end up getting screwed over because they don't take out the person. For example, like, he brought up the Ward situation. It was Coulson's decision to work with Ward, and Ward ended up, like, almost killing Bobby. And then now, like, there's this whole situation, because last episode they started working with Creel, who ended up killing people in their team. And, Bobby was like, well, he's actually, don't blame that on Coulson. That was actually... Talbot's, guy, but he's like, no, but Coulson's the one that greenlit he's the one that said okay to the decision. And now we're here with Malik and we're not able to take out Malik. We're letting the bad guy go again. And this is going to come back to bite us in the ass. Which, granted, that is true when you look at it like that. What Hunter said wasn't 100% false. Granted, in Malik's case, if you were to kill him, there'd be heavy backlash. In the U.S. government, just because everyone would go a little crazy trying to find out who killed him. It turned into its own situation. But, that was something that was interesting that is pointed out. Like, you do kind of see that pattern pop up, from time to time. So, but like I said, be very interesting to see where everything goes. But that's all I really want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.